Okay, well, let's jump into it. Let's look at the first one. Again, four essential parts of building a great system, or as you say in Scottish, mechanism, right?
Good
Okay,
translation.
process.
Yeah, so process is the very first step, and actually, these are in sequence. So once, if you're going to try and do something, you need to understand the process, right? Within lean, of course, without process, there can be no improvement, right? So if you can't point at something and clearly identify, hey, I do A, then B, then C, and sometimes I do D, or maybe in this circumstance I'll do E. What's interesting to me, Lee, is that it's amazing how many companies and how many people we speak to as part of our kind of onboarding and sales process. That when you ask them, hey, can you just explain your process, kind of high level? How do you buy stuff? How do you sell stuff? And it's just really interesting to me how many people actually can't really describe that, right?
Yeah.
Well, sometimes we do this and sometimes we do that. Oh, but actually, there's this use case where we do, and you start realizing that, okay, you really don't have a process. And,
No.
hell, look, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, I guess now, we were using Visio for doing this now. There's way better tools out there these days for doing
Mhm.
process mapping than Visio, thankfully. But it's really interesting how many companies, like I'd probably less than 5% is in my experience,
Yeah.
actually have their business processes mapped out in any way, shape, or form. Okay.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be formal. It doesn't have to be Visio or Lucidchart or BPMN, right?
Yeah.
It could just be post-its on a wall. It could just be a whiteboard, right?
Yeah.
But if you can describe what happens one step after the other to have a
Okay.
logical start and end, right, with potentially some options in between, then you can describe your process, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And
Let me
so
insert one idea here. Going back to my a consulting firm I worked for years ago. The owner went through the Lean Six Sigma process, and he was very interested in applying it to the organization. And so I watched him, and that's sort of where I learned a little bit of this, where he literally would just take a whiteboard and said,
mm,
"Okay, bring someone in, tell me what you do, and now tell me what it is the steps that you take to do that." And then they would draw lines. And I'm very visual. I love diagrams. I love
yeah,
visualizing things on whiteboards. All my strategies and stuff are like that. You can see my whiteboard behind me. I mean, I'm always constantly trying to get them out of my head. And
yep.
so to me, that made so much sense. I'm resonating a lot with what you're saying.
Yeah, and getting things out of people's heads and getting them into something that we can
Yeah.
all share. And again, like you're right. I mean, whiteboards I've got two either side of me right now.
Yeah.
That I use all the time, and then using just taking a quick picture of
Yeah.
that and sharing
I,
it with
I
people.
think that even just a whiteboard where you're not really formally documenting it,
Mm.
just writing it down is revealing.
Oh, wow. Absolutely. And, it's kind of interesting when someone explains it and you start writing on the board, like, oh, and then, oh, wait a minute, hang on, I forgot this and I forgot that.
Yes.
And I forgot, and suddenly the whole thing kind of comes to light.